majestic castle with tall towers rose among the green hills. It was the home of the Campbell family. The suddenly awakened young man with disheveled blonde hair looked around, clutching the blanket in his hands dazedly. He remembered dying in the accident, but now he was alive. Could it really be? Looking at his hands, he wondered, time travel? All around him was a luxurious palace with Western-style furniture, as if from a historical era. When he went to the mirror, he saw in the reflection a young man of 17 to 18 years old with a face similar to his own. Panic gripped him. Where had he gone? He took a closer look at himself and sighed heavily. Even in his youth he had been handsome, so was this a game, a virtual reality, or something more? Suddenly it hit him. Traveling to another dimension after a truck accident? That's the plot of a typical otaku fantasy. He took a knife and made a small cut on his finger to make sure it was real. But when he felt the searing pain, he was horrified to realize that this was not a dream, but real life. He remembered the story of Mun Campbell, an aristocrat who dared to insult the ruling family. He had been stripped of his status and exiled. The sentence was harsh. If he ever returned to the empire, he would be executed on the spot. The young man laughed nervously. He had hoped it was just a coincidence of names, but now there was no doubt. He ended up in the body of a crazy playboy with golden hair. It's hard to even call him a villain. Lying in bed, the young man stared at his phone, rereading the description of the novel, The Strongest Heroine in History. It was one of the few books he read every day. The plot centered on the illegitimate daughter of a fallen nobleman who fought demons and monsters to save the world. He remembered that in that novel there was a character named Mun Campbell, a villain who used his family's power to bully the protagonist from the beginning. He constantly sent assassins to her, thus unwittingly helping her to become stronger. However, his intrigues were revealed, and misfortune caught up with his entire family. In the end, he was exiled to the border, where he became a beggar, and after the 20th chapter, he was never remembered again. When he realized that he was now the same Mun Campbell, the young man clutched his head. He could have been a worthy man, but instead he had wasted his life and died foolishly. In a panic, he complained about the injustice of fate. Why couldn't he be reborn as a protagonist? Now he's just a loser who will be a stepping stone on the path of the real heroine. But what should he do now? At that moment, there was a knock on the door. He, barely able to cope with his panic, allowed entry. A Campbell housemaid named and entered the room and called out to him. She informed him that the outfit for tomorrow's banquet had been delivered and that he had been asked to try it on. In response, the young man waved his hand lazily, telling her to leave him alone. However, noticing something strange, An looked at him with slight suspicion. She noticed the blood and immediately asked if he had hurt himself. The young man dismissed it as a minor scratch, but asked for something to stop the blood, like a band-aid. However, An questioned back in surprise. Band-aid? She admitted that she didn't know what he was talking about, but she could help stop the blood. The young man rejoiced, but did not have time to finish. Suddenly An took his hand and he froze in shock as she didn't hesitate to put his finger to her lips and began licking the wound. It was all he could manage, staring at her dumbfounded. An took his hand away from her lips with a slight smile and said contentedly that not a drop of his precious blood had been wasted. Then, touching his lips coquettishly, she wished him to take care of himself. An blushed, mumbling embarrassedly that he would remember this moment. An, as if it were no big deal, calmly announced that she had work to do. He nervously thanked her for her help as she left. When the door closed behind her, he exhaled heavily, his heart racing. Suddenly he blushed even more and covered his face with his hands, realizing the whole situation. Jesus, how dirty, he shrieked, remembering the maid's gentle touches. Falling back on the bed, he continued to roll around on it enthusiastically, calling her sweetheart. An, meanwhile, paused in front of the door and thought for a moment. She was surprised to note that this was the first time the young master had thanked her. But despite all these emotions, he couldn't help but wonder, why did Mun Campbell provoke the main character in the first place? He had good looks, money, a house, and even a devoted maid. If he remembered correctly, the reason for his banishment would be the scandal of the drug he would slip to the third princess during the coming-of-age ceremony. But now, knowing this in advance, he could avoid his tragic fate. Smiling, he decided to just not pester the protagonist or do anything stupid at the ceremony. After all, now Mun had a chance to change his fate. He thought deeply, trying to calculate his next move. The main thing was to stay rich and avoid exile. But when exactly would the ceremony take place? As soon as he realized that the outfit for the ceremony had already been delivered, his face froze in horror. Tomorrow? Rushed through his mind. The explosion of emotion was not long in coming. A thunderous shout rang throughout the castle. Fuck! Lying on the bed, the young man began searching for any clues about his new world. He called out to the system, his grandfather, a goddess, or even a monk, hoping someone would answer. but in response, silence. He wondered with despair. Where were his chits? How could they have forgotten about him? Even though he had only drawn 5 golden tickets out of 10 attempts in his past life, that didn't mean he could just be abandoned in this world. The ceremony was already tomorrow, too late to change anything. He wasn't sure if apologizing would make up for past wrongs. But a disturbing thought flashed through his mind. What if he was forced to do something humiliating, like lick the main character's feet in public? Having decided that a real man is not afraid of anything, he began to prepare himself morally for any humiliation, as long as he did not become a beggar. After all, if he had to, he was ready to go through it. As long as he wore black stockings. Full of determination, he made a decision. Tomorrow at the ceremony, he would fall on his knees before the heroine at the speed of light and bow 3 times. But suddenly something hit him right in the head. He cried out in pain and exclaimed, "What the hell just flew at him?" As he looked around the bed, he noticed a strange object. At first he thought it was a phone, but after a closer look, he realized that it was a mysterious book that exuded magical energy. When he picked it up, his face lit up with delight at last. His chits had arrived. Excited, he clutched the book to his chest, glad that his god had not abandoned him. Now he was still cannon fodder, but with cheats it was a different story. Determined to change the plot, he opened the book, intending to take fate into his own hands, but he froze in bewilderment. He turned the pages, blinking in shock. The book was empty. The young man stared thoughtfully at the blank pages of the book, pondering if it had some way of activation. Since it was a Western European setting, perhaps he should use a traditional ritual? Without thinking long, he ran his finger across his lip, leaving a small scratch, and let drops of blood fall onto the pages. At the same moment, the book began to shake, and a dark energy enveloped him. His eyes widened with horror. What was even happening? Blood ran down his arms, and pain pierced his entire body. He tried to realize what was wrong, but it was too late. When he woke up, he found himself chained in a dark room. His body was covered with abrasions. His gaze clouded over, but then a girl with red eyes appeared in front of him. She whispered with a slight smile that she had been waiting for his awakening for a long time. The young man tried to move, but the chains held him tight. He cried out in pain, but he heard the cold reply that pain was necessary to teach him a lesson. The girl sighed, saying that he shouldn't have been in this situation, but it was his own fault. His anger, cruelty, and selfishness had brought him here. She continued, claiming that his destiny was different. He was meant to hurt those around him, to make everyone hate himself. Then he would belong only to her. But something had changed. With a grim smile, she assured him she wasn't worried. After all, she would fix him with her love, no matter how long it took. Her red eyes flashed, and she promised that they would always be together. Not even death could separate them. The young man screamed, fighting back desperately. "No, no!" The hero wakes up in his room, breathing heavily. He tries to realize what just happened, and is relieved to realize that it was just a dream, or was it? Still feeling the pain on his body, he begins to question whether it was just a nightmare or a prophetic vision. Examining his arm, he recalls the strange book drawing blood from him, and then came a vision of torture. If the book is indeed a cheat, then perhaps it was trying to show him the consequences of his meddling in the course of events. Opening the book again, he sees the frightening inscription, "Do not try to change your destiny." Questioningly repeating this warning, he realizes that any interference in the plot could have fatal consequences. A dark energy begins to emanate from the book, as if confirming his hunches. He realizes that this is a warning. If he tries to change the course of events, his end will be sad. However, if he leaves things as they are, he will inevitably end up as an insignificant villain who will soon be forgotten. Looking out the window, he realizes his mistake. Before, he had hoped that he could save himself by simply changing his actions. But the truth is different. The only way to survive is through destruction. However, the original plot did not involve his death. Moon's character disappears from the story, but he doesn't die. Then, if he also just disappears, he gets a chance to start over. Encouraged by this thought, he decides to use the knowledge from his past life, because unlike the useless aristocrat, he has gone through many hardships of the modern world. If he quickly disappears from the plot, he can live a new life after his exile by simply applying his logic. After all, why cling to the status of aristocrat at all? It's just a privilege of the exploiters. A true warrior can survive with his hands and knowledge. With these thoughts, he proceeds to eat, savoring the sumptuous meat and wine. Never before has he tasted anything so delicious. This is definitely a privilege of the upper class. At that moment, he is noticed by his mother, Duchess Noyce Campbell. She is surprised that her son looks so pleased. What has happened to make him so happy? Duke Ron Campbell, enjoying the meal, remarks that tomorrow's banquet is an important event for his son. Moon confirms that he is looking forward to it. Duchess Noyce Campbell, delighted with how fast her son is growing up, predicts that he will attract the attention of many girls. However, the Duke reminds her that he already has a fiancée, Princess Celia, and her jealousy could be a problem. Despite this, the Duchess expresses dissatisfaction with the choice. In her opinion, Celia is too cold and not suitable for her son. Meanwhile, Moon himself does not realize who Celia is. Memories of her begin to surface. She is the third princess of the empire, cold on the outside but with a mysterious nature that attracted many suitors. Moon is mentally ironic, thinking that only his parents think he is perfect. However, he realizes that they are good people, but because of the upcoming scandal at the ceremony, they will be exiled. The book argues that he cannot change his fate, but going through exile and surviving is not easy even for a modern man. If he is forbidden to change his own fate, he may try to change the fate of others. The incident at the banquet won't be the cause of the family's downfall. His father will be accused of treason, but it's more like a political conspiracy among the nobility. Mun decides to find the culprit or frame another to save his family. There's a place in the Western setting that can help with that. There's no time to prepare. The ceremony is tomorrow. The main problem is insulting the princess, the future empress. Ordinary poison won't work on her, because she's a genius magician. He has no memories of poison in the mansion, so he has to find another way. Moon contemplates getting out into the city to check out the place where, according to the novel, criminals and villains congregate. He realizes that words alone will not do the trick. However, his thoughts are interrupted by an accident. A servant girl carrying a tea tray stumbles and falls. She complains about the pain and complains about the spilled tea. Moon, realizing his fault, apologizes to her, explaining that he was thinking. The girl immediately recognizes him and, visibly nervous, calls him by his name. The maid panics and offers to clean up the spilled tea immediately, but she is so worried that she feels as if she is being punished. She begs not to be beaten, removed from her job, or thrown out on the street. Moon is confused. Does he really have such a bad reputation that a mere drop of tea makes people cringe? He assures her that he is not going to punish her and asks if she is sick, as she is obviously hot. The girl is surprised by his concern. Moon notices that she has a high fever and wonders why she isn't resting. The maid explains that tomorrow is a banquet in honor of his ceremony, and there aren't enough workers at the mansion. Moon replies that sick people shouldn't work. At that moment, another maid appears, reminding him of the schedule. Moon, deciding to show concern, asks the maid's name. She introduces herself as Noelle. He agrees that she really needs to rest. On reminds her that all the maids are busy preparing for the ceremony, and the workload would increase if they were to be let go. In response, Moon suggests just hiring extra people since a family with such a huge mansion can afford it. The young gentleman decides that the sick employees should rest and hire new ones in their place to avoid problems at the banquet. Maid-on agrees to relay this instruction to the head maid, whereupon Moon leaves. Noelle notes that he had previously forbidden bringing in people from outside, calling them filthy, but this time he gave the opposite order. On advises to simply comply with the order. On notices that the young gentleman has changed and decides to prepare for possible surprises. Meanwhile, he rummages through the chest looking for something important. He remembers that the only way to deal with the princess is with a special dictionary potion, but there is only one place to get it. Soon he finds a rare item in the chest, a VIP pass to the black market, wondering if its owner was a real scumbag for having such a valuable item. Later, he goes to the Chessford trading house to buy jewelry for his parents in honor of tomorrow's banquet. He then goes outside and notices that he is in a noisy place full of people. He heads towards the city of Belgrade, remembering that the right place is in a deep sewer outside the capital. There, lighting the way with a torch, he tries to find the entrance. Suddenly he is stopped by a guard at a massive door. When asked who is coming, the young man replies, "A sewer rat." The guard demands an explanation of the purpose of the visit, to which he states that he is looking for carrion, and provides his pass. The protagonist passes through massive doors and enters the underground black market, a place hidden from the eyes of ordinary people. Everything can be found here, ingredients for potions, magical creatures, and even slave traders. However, he is interested in something else entirely. Entering one of the shops, he encounters a masked salesman who excitedly greets the first customer of the day. When asked about the desired item, the hero replies that he needs a special potion, colorless, odorless, designed for mages, capable of putting them to sleep for several hours. The seller guesses the buyer's intentions and, with a chuckle, assumes he is a thrill seeker like many rich people. He even offers the contact of a good slave dealer. However, the hero refuses and hurries away. But as soon as he turns around, the seller abruptly changes his tone and declares that he has the necessary potion. The hero notices strange behavior of the merchant. He is completely hidden under a cloak, his voice is changed by magic, and his body is disguised. It is difficult to make out even the gender of the man, but her tone, movements, and manner of speech suggest that she is a woman. And when she bends over to look for the potion, his guesses are confirmed. Her figure reveals the truth. He suggests that this woman may be hiding her identity for the sake of survival in such a dangerous place. A plan is maturing in his mind. If a good relationship is established between them, she could be a useful ally after his inevitable exile. The masked character asks to wait a little while the store is looking for the right potion. He is in no hurry. The main thing is to get what he wants. At that moment, a mysterious figure wrapped in a dark cloak appears, and the shopkeeper greets her. The newly arrived client immediately declares that he needs a powerful drug that leaves no magic traces. The merchant is surprised, as such drugs are rarely bought, but agrees to look for them. Moon concludes that the woman, judging from her figure and odor, has a special charm and probably has access to such substances. When the merchant finally takes out the order, Moon notices that the potion is too brightly colored. However, the merchant assures him that it will be undetectable in a drink, especially in red wine. Moreover, its potency is so great that even a drop can knock out an elephant for hours. Moon is perplexed by this fact, but the seller insists that such power comes at a price. Mun refuses to try the potion on himself, especially considering the cost of 130,000. The seller asks how the payment will be made. The girl in black offers information instead of money. The seller starts to think about a deal, but the girl in the cloak assures him that the information is worth more. The girl gives the seller the information in exchange for the potion. The seller scrutinizes the contents, wondering if the information she has received can be trusted. However, she agrees that the shopkeeper can check them for himself. As a sign of trust, he hands the potion to the buyer, confirming that the information is indeed more valuable than gold. The girl in black thanks the clerk and she says goodbye, adding that she will not see her off. Before leaving, the young man shows his card, which attracts the clerk's attention. Suddenly, he is given a small gift, an extra vial with unknown contents. When he asks what is inside, the vendor smilingly replies that it enhances the effects of the red potion. After thanking her, the young man tries to find out more about the woman who had previously sold the information. The seller suddenly offers to buy her for 90,000, but then sharply raises the price to 900,000. Realizing that this is a clear attempt at profiteering, the hero refuses and leaves. Reflecting on what happened, he realizes that the seller was trying to increase her profits right in front of his eyes, which seems suspicious. He concludes that everyone is looking for profit on the black market and he will need a more reliable partner in the future. After he leaves, the vendor is left pondering. She laughs, realizing that the ceremony she thought was insignificant will turn out to be much more interesting, since the princess will appear at the banquet. In addition, new employees are being hired because of the shortage of servants. Now she has to decide who to sell this valuable information to. She recalls the second prince who disliked his talented sister and the duke who had a falling out with the Campbell family. Weighing all the options, she comes to the conclusion that it is possible to sell the information to both sides, maximizing the benefit. The saleswoman smiles smugly, realizing that her cunning plan will allow her to kill two birds with one stone. Meanwhile, the next night is coming. An important event is taking place at the luxurious Campbell Palace. The guests are gathered in a hall and the atmosphere is filled with sophistication. One of the guests takes his daughter to a young man of high rank and introduces her. However, the girl, facing a young man she has already met, becomes very nervous. Unable to bear the awkwardness, she panics and declares that her mom is calling her, and immediately runs away, leaving everyone confused. The men watching this look a little confused. The girl's father apologizes for his daughter's behavior, explaining her shyness. In response, Moon smiles diplomatically, assuring that he is not offended, and invites the guests to take their seats. He notes to himself that this reaction was expected. The problem is not only the Marquis's daughter, but also many of the others present, all looking at him with the same suspicious glances. He reflects with a slight chuckle that the owner of the body he was reborn into has a reputation for being just plain nasty. At that moment, his father comes up to him and praises him, saying that he's doing a good job. The young man is surprised by his father's words, but he continues, explaining that today is his day. He must become a real man of the Campbell family and show himself worthy. The boy replies that he will do his best. The hall announces the arrival of an important person, calling for silence. The guests are introduced to the third in line to the throne, Princess Leopold. A girl gracefully enters the hall. She is presented as a child of purity, blessed by the goddess of ice and snow, the third princess of the empire. All eyes are fixed on her, and her presence instantly captures the attention of those present. The girl's name was Celia. Moon's father instructs him to take care of the princess while he goes to meet the other dukes. Moon agrees and takes charge of the reception. During the ball, Moon greets the princess with a smile, approaching her with an elegant bow. Celia, upon seeing Moon, remarks that she hasn't seen him in a while, and Moon calls her charming. She thanks him for the compliment, but her expression remains reserved and slightly wary. The girl notes that she rarely hears praise from Moon, flirtatiously adjusting her dress. Moon laughs, saying her words make him look like a rude person who can't keep his mouth shut. Celia clarifies with an icy stare to see if that's really the case. Moon is clearly a little lost under her pressure. He offers her a rest after the road before the formal part of the banquet begins. The princess thanks him politely. As Celia leaves, Moon sighs in relief, noting that although she is beautiful, her aura is truly intimidating. Meanwhile, those around him notice that Moon is acting a little differently today than usual. Celia casts a glance at the departing Moon and wonders if he has changed for the better, becoming more polite. Moon notices the presence of the illegitimate daughter and remembers that she recently engaged in a duel with her fiancé. He had heard that Count Bougard had given her the right of inheritance, but he doubted whether she deserved it, given her background and gender. In the hall, they discuss the situation in whispers, warning each other not to speak too loudly, for the Count is also here. Moon recognizes her as the protagonist of the original story, the real central female figure of this world. Everyone's attention is on Ariel Bougard, who confidently enters the hall accompanied by another girl. Ariel greets Moon and asks how he's doing, showing that they already know each other. A little confused, Moon puts on a smile and replies that he's fine. Suddenly there is a shout from one of the courtiers, who rudely condemns Ariel's insolence, calling her a lowlife. Moon reacts lightning fast and, grabbing the screamer by the collar, angrily orders him to shut up. Moon smiles broadly and says he's been doing great lately, thanking Ariel for bothering him. She raises her eyebrows incredulously, clearly surprised by that tone. Inwardly, Ariel is lost in speculation. Why didn't Moon call her a bastard like before? She even wonders if he's the right man. Meanwhile, the young man turns to her companion, assuming it is Miss Leah. Leah is shocked. She didn't expect Moon to even know her name. The young man explains with a slight smile that he couldn't help but know the name of such an important guest of the evening. Suddenly, Moon's hand is beaten. Ariel looks angrily at Moon and demands an explanation of what he's up to. She pulls him close to her and looks straight into his eyes, telling him to listen to her carefully. Ariel warns that she is here solely because of his father, and if he ever dares to plot against Leah, she will not tolerate it. Then, turning around, she leads Leah away with determination. Moon reflects on the fact that the girl still sees him as the same old man, and it will be difficult to change her opinion in a short period of time. He sighs heavily, realizing that stereotypes can't be broken so easily. But he decides that it doesn't matter, because after tonight their fates will be like parallel lines. Now he sees her more as a savior and an important figure with whom he has to cooperate. Soon Moon finds himself on the balcony with his parents, under the gaze of the assembled aristocrats. It is at this moment that he realizes the importance of what is happening. He completes his coming-of-age speech in front of all the nobles of the empire. From that moment on, he officially becomes the heir to the Campbell family. However, he knows that if events continue as preordained, his status as heir will only last until the end of this evening. The people downstairs applaud, unaware of the possible change. After a tense performance, he sighs in relief, glad that the official part is finally over. It had been a tiring evening, but there's no time to relax. It's time to get on with more important matters. His gaze becomes focused as he turns his attention back to his goals. A familiar figure catches his attention, and he realizes exactly who he is supposed to find. Inwardly pulling himself together, he calls out the name Princess Celicia. In a secluded place, the princess relaxes and enjoys her drink, as if she has escaped from the limelight. When Moon notices her, he realizes that he has found the one he's been looking for. He admits that he was rude to leave the princess alone, especially since he is the host of the evening. By addressing her by name, he shows respect and realizes his mistake. Moon extends his hand with a slight smile, asking if the princess will honor him and agree to dance with him. The princess is surprised to hear him ask if he is really inviting her. She's about to say something, but then agrees, explaining that since it's his coming-of-age ceremony, she has no reason to refuse. Moon thanks her for agreeing. A group of guests are watching the scene, whispering among themselves. One of them is surprised to notice that the situation is taking an unexpected turn. Leah, seeing what is happening, immediately calls out to Ariel, pointing to the center of the room. Ariel, not realizing what has happened, continues to eat her dessert quietly. At this time, Moon and the princess begin to dance in the middle of the hall, surrounded by other couples. The music fills the space, creating the atmosphere of a grand ball. The princess notices that Moon has some pretty confident dance moves. He modestly replies that his level is still elementary. She looks at him carefully and says that he has changed a lot. Moon is surprised and asks in what ways he has stopped acting like a true aristocrat. The princess clarifies that it's not about his manners, but about the way he invites people in now. Moon doesn't fully understand what she means. She reminds him that the last time he asked the Viscount's daughter to dance, his words sounded completely different. Moon remembers and tenses inwardly. He had spoken with an arrogant smirk then, saying that the girl should be glad that he, a young master, had condescended to dance with her. Now he was confused, realizing how much he had changed. The princess icily asks if she imitated his manner of speech well. Her tone is clearly mocking, alluding to Moon's behavior in the past. In response, he admits his mistake and asks her to forget what happened. During the dance, Moon unexpectedly asks the princess to come to her room afterward. She looks surprised. She reminds him that they are engaged, but Moon immediately clarifies that he's not going to go beyond the bounds of propriety. He explains that he wants to discuss their engagement and work out the details. The princess, hearing this, looks at him with slight surprise and curiosity, as if she had not expected such seriousness. Well, we'll soon find out what happens to our princess and Moon. Will he do something to her that will make us ashamed? Or will he be killed? Anyway, if you want the next part, write the secret word, "made" in the comments. That way I'll know you've seen the rest of this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and put a like. See you later and bye-bye.